Today we're going to go over the testimony, quote unquote, pitiful pale slaves of the Barbary Moors. Pale slaves as he appeared before he was rescued, carrying his master's merchandise. This is a man who escaped from prison and came in contact with a few other people who recorded it. And he tells the story of him going through the ritual of becoming a Muslim with the Moors. Before I begin, I would like you to keep in your heart that if these Moors didn't want to help him, he would have starved to death. They could have just walked away and he would have starved to death. But they chose to help him. However, something must have went awry. Sunday Republic, Stephen Bonsal, 1903. Let's begin. So it all started with this man, and everybody was drinking wine in public, and he had his dog with him, a shepherd dog. And whatever happened, the dog got shot, and he wrestled the pistol from the man who had drawn it, and in a moment before he knew it, what was going on, he had fired with deadly effect. So he ended up shooting somebody, going to jail. He jumps over the wall and gets away from the prison, but he was sent to the Moorish coast, is what it said, sentenced to 10 years imprisonment and sent to Melilla, the penal settlement of the Moorish coast. But he gets over the wall and he escapes. That night and the following day, he wandered up the mountains, and on the evening of the second day, starving and almost dead with fatigue, he engaged with a party of Moors. They carried him to the village and held a council of the elders as to what they should do with him. And their decision was made known the next day. Provided he became a Mohammedan, they would give him food and receive him into their family as a brother. If not, they would torture him to death. So they didn't even have to help him at all. They could have just walked away and he would have died of starvation. But they said, we'll take you in as our brother, but you have to know how to govern yourself. So let's see what goes on. Remember, they could have walked away and he could have just died of hunger. This was the crucial point in the poor fellow's story. For days we could never get him beyond it. Then it was, I made a mistake, he would cry. Then it was, I gave my soul to hellfire to save my body. I should have remained steadfast to the faith, but I chose to live and become a Moor, is what he states. And I do not blame them, for they treated me as a renegade always deserves to be treated. But they said they would treat him as a brother, so he must have been a renegade against being a Muslim while he was in the society. When we got him to go on, he imitated in a blood-curdling way the cynical laugh with which the leading man among the Moors received his renunciation of his church and faith. They said they would now begin with the ceremony of initiation, without which he could not be a Muslim. It was his baptism of blood. They tied my arms and feet and swung me on a board, to which they made me so fast I could not move in one direction or the other, a hair's breadth. Once he was securely fastened, the Moors took turns in stabbing and chopping out pieces of their victim, using their knives slowly with calculated cruelty. There was no mistake about this part of his story, certainly. As we saw, there was not a square inch of his body that was not scarred. A terrible attack of brain fever followed his ordeal, from which our renegade never entirely recovered, at least never mentally. When he could move about again, he found that it had been better for him to have died under the knife. He had only been spared to become the village drudge day by day. Well, they helped him from starving, so he should have got up and seen what he could do to assist around the society, and butt of sport by the boys when the evening came. Weeks passed and ran into months, and though they beat him unmercifully, the renegade was proving of very little use to his captors. So finally one day they traded him off with a traveling merchant who was passing through our village for a donkey that was broken down, in which he would have had to leave behind in any case. Something else had to happen with the way he was governing himself. Most definite. I'm 100%. There was other actions that happened that caused this. They already stated, we will treat you like our brother, our fellow man. But he was doing something that was not acceptable by no means. Also, this identified him as a slave, but he wasn't a slave. This was just a circumstance that happened, that his actions caused him to come in contact with these people and cause a situation. However, weighing the initiation, we know that we are endowed with the potent seed of Allah from the beginning, and an adept is born, not made. You can't cut it in them. I hope you enjoyed the reading and the study. The image that you're seeing is Otto Rons, who did a lot of archaeological investigations, and right here he found the 5 pinnacle that they would stand in for initiation. And he was studying, looking for the Atlanteans and the creations of the Atlanteans. But that's a whole nother demonstration. The intro to this story is very interesting. It says, years ago, it was the custom, as the wills of a number of good men testify, to leave sums of money to ransom Christians held in slavery by the Moors of Barbary. But in fact, again, the Atlanteans and the creations of the Atlanteans, teaching these Barbary corsairs respect for our flag, was the first triumph of quote-unquote America. But that's not true, because you was begging the Moors. You was like, look, they recognized our banner with the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. First triumph, arms of diplomacy in a foreign field, which was colonization. It was in these piratical wars that the Decatur's and our other naval heroes carried the knowledge of quote-unquote American sea power not only to Europe, but to Africa. Nautical navigation is mooring. And moorings, come on, man. Just like the Europeans that have the coiled serpent and it says, don't tread on me. That has to do with water. You tread on water. Europeans was getting ran down on by, just like what Trump is talking about, tariffs. That came from the Moor tariff, who was charging all the Europeans. So when you hear Trump speak of tariff, he's speaking under Moorish law, and that's Moorish jurisdiction. Tariff, that comes from the Moor tariff. And they was taxing all of these Europeans coming through the water, trying to come through their canals and everything. Just like the Havana, Cuba, Panama Canal that Trump's trying to get. But you got to pay to play. You can't just take, you got to pay to play. And that's what's going on. I leave you in love and peace.